The June 18th, 2018 Board of Health meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Just love using that gavel. All right. And we'll start the meeting just by standing and pledging allegiance to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Happy hot summer day, everybody. We like this a lot. Okay. We'll start off by just looking at the May meeting minutes. They came in, I think, a little bit toward the end of last week. I don't know if everybody got a chance to look at them yet, but I did take a brief look at them, and I didn't see anything that needed correction. Anybody have any corrections that they saw? Okay. So that being said, we will, if someone would move to have the minutes approved.
So move.
So moved. Second of the five of us, or the six of us? Yeah. There's a second. And all in favor? Aye. Aye. All not? No. So they will approve. So we'll put these on the website and move on to the health officer's report, please. Marie, do you have a second?
Good evening. So we had 34 food safety inspections completed this past month, one temporary event. Pliable opened up. Now it's a healthier option food place. It is currently open. We had 26 pool inspections completed, including the outdoor pools within the township. We are planning, our department, Kate and I, we're planning to partner with the Recreation Department to restart the quarterly distribution of the Live Well, Play Well, Be Well newsletter. It's going to be offered to the residents by email and website posting. We are hoping to offer, useful information to our residents on a variety of health and wellness topics, so any ideas out there are welcome. The Radnor Police Department offers Radnor resident CPR classes. The next scheduled class is Tuesday, June 9th. It's tomorrow at 7 p.m. And residents can register in person in the police department. We did have 14 complaints come into the department. During this time of year, it's typical to see an increase in dog bites throughout the community. And finally, our Workplace Safety Committee meeting was held in June 13th. And no workplace injuries were noted this month. And we also discussed at that time how to avoid dog bites and kind of what to do during an encounter. And that's it. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, is the pool inspections that you folks do, this is a pool, like, is it basically the pool water kind of inspections, the testing the water, or is it other things?
No, what we do is we visit both. Well, we visit the indoor pools once a month all throughout the year, and then when the outdoor pools are open, we go there once a month while they're open. So basically, what we do is we go and make sure the lifeguards who are on duty all have their certification. We make sure they're testing the water. The pools themselves have to actually have the water tested by a lab and sent to our office weekly. We check to make sure they have all their safety equipment on site. That kind of thing.
Thank you. And then I guess just to kind of making a note for the township for this time of year, there are some waterborne illnesses around, even in chlorinated pools and even pools that are well cared for. There have been episodes of a couple of parasites that are found in pool water, and just to make everybody aware, the township in the summertime, but unusual episodes of diarrhea and bloating specifically in children, but also in adults as well. Specifically more dangerous in people who have immune disorders or immune compromise. There are a few parasites, one called Giardia and one called Cryptosporidium, which are, they can be an issue in the summer. So I think if you have a child or an adult who has increased bloating and gassiness, increased diarrhea for more than 5 or 7 days, first of all, stay out of the pool. And secondly, you should seek medical assistance to see if they can be cultured for some of those parasites. Okay.
I just have a quick question. Marie, about the CPR class tomorrow. So is that basic life support or lay CPR, just for clarification? Because I know a couple of people might be interested.
I actually think they offer both, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll find out for you, and I'll email you. I can actually ask Chris when we leave here tonight.
Be great. So would that satisfy, I'm thinking about lifeguarding and things like that for students that may want to lifeguard this summer. That's a requisite for applying for the job, the CPR.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay. On to some old business. We had discussed in a couple of meetings the plan for any advice from the Board of Health about smoking on the streets and near the businesses of Wayne and in Radnor in general. We also have had a number of discussions via email with our board and trying to figure out the balance between our recommendations for the Board of Commissioners and, everyone's personal beliefs, everyone's sort of freedom to do things, and also, good points from many board members about, how far do we go in regulating pollution in our community? Do we go as far as regulating cars and other things, or is this just about cigarette smoking and some other topics that have been brought up? So through the summer, I think one of the things, and Dr. Wheeler was nice enough to email me and then speak to me before the meeting tonight, was that I think that we're going to try to, kind of put our our stamp on this by starting with a survey of the public, maybe to try to figure out some of the issues the public might have with this, as well as maybe local businesses. And I will certainly get on it this summer to speak with the departments in the township that deal with the cleaning of the parks, that deal with the other things that may go on with smoking in public areas, and if it's a big enough issue for those departments to have to deal with that all on a weekly or a monthly basis to clean up and things like that. Is this an issue for them? So I think that getting some full information back by the fall, we might be able to start to really make a debate about a recommendation. Okay. And I think
If I may.
Yeah, Mr. Nagel.
There's a program that the State of Pennsylvania Board of Health or Health Department has called Young Lungs at Play. So I understand that we have requested information from them.
Okay.
When would the survey be done? What
We're
were
just
the questions?
discussing this. So
Okay.
we're unclear yet. We'll have to communicate via email this summer, so we have no meeting for the next couple of months. But again, as always, I think our sort of wording with the community should be simple. It should be that the Board of Health is here to make medical recommendations to the Board of Commissioners, for the health and the safety of the township. And we're not here to regulate or legislate. We just are making recommendations. So we're looking for people's opinions on, I think, how they feel about dining in Wayne, and do they feel it's an offensive thing to have that smoke smell? Is it, and I don't know the exact questioning yet, but I think we have to sort of figure out how to keep this as, I think opinion as not much as an argument about what we should do about this, but they're people's opinions on what they think about what happens in the community.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think ultimately it's our opinion, and
Eventually
and not so much whether people find it offensive. That's my own belief about that. We strictly have to look at the facts, the health facts, but I do think it would be good to survey the businesses, because they will need to comply with what they let their patrons do. So whether or not many of their patrons are even smoking, or whether it would affect their business, I do think that's something that I don't know if it should affect what we recommend, but I do think that that's worth looking at.
Well, I think the business should certainly be involved. I just don't know what the real numbers or what the real information will be. Let's say I go to the township and they say, yeah, we're spending, 2 man-hours, 10 man-hours a week cleaning up cigarette butts and ashtrays and stuff like that in the parks. Is that something that kind of goes into our decision-making? So I think all the facts will be necessary before we make any kind of, informed statement or decision about this kind of thing. So, but I agree that the businesses should be the ones that are surveyed as well, because they are the ones that are making some of the change. They would have to make some of the changes if there's any legislation that happens.
I wonder also if we can find out about cigarette sale numbers from the proprietors in our township. Maybe that would be worth looking at to see. I know it's not an exact measure of the amount of smoking, because people can get their cigarettes elsewhere, but I think that might be a good number to have.
Seems like a big task, though. It's a lot of the big stores, right? The Giants and the and the Acmes and things like that. That's a big business for them. All right. So we will discuss over the summer how to do that. As far as how the summer does go with the Board of Health, we don't have meetings both in July and August. If there are any emergency issues, I'm usually contacted by the the Township Health Officer, and we can discuss from there. There has been only one time in my career as a board member that we've had to have a meeting over the summer, and over a restaurant that had some issues. So if there is any issues, but please feel free, anybody, to email me with any questions. You're certainly welcome to do so at any point this summer, and we'll be happy to get in discussion and see if we need to meet. Okay, so that's an easy one. And as far as the other new business goes, we do have some student presentations today because the students are completing their, I guess you guys are juniors this year? Senior. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, congratulations on graduation. Yay. But thank you for your service here on the board, and we do have you guys making some presentations today. So if you want to start that process up, we can get that rolling.
Is there a way I can get it connected to the? Okay. Awesome. All right. Good afternoon, Radnor Board of Health, and my presentation today is going to be on nutrition in Radnor schools. So in order to start off like my whole project, I thought the best way to learn about this would be to interview Russell Dilks, who's also known as the District Food Service Coordinator of all of the elementary schools, middle schools, and the high school, although his main duties really happen at the high school because that's where his office is. Some of his daily tasks include assisting staff, checking emails, placing food orders, as well as managing the 4 vending machines in the cafeteria. So a little bit more about Russ's food orders. He makes sure that there's milk and bread every day, there's fresh produce twice a week. He also receives what's called government commodities, which, as being a public school, all public schools are under kind of like the same umbrella, the same regulations as participating under the NSLP, which is the National School Lunch Program, which I'll get to in a little bit. So National School Lunch Program is actually part of the NSLA, which is the National School Lunch Act, which was established by Harry Truman in 1946. And the NSLP could be defined as, it's defined as a federally assisted meal program operating in public and nonprofit private schools and residential childcare institutions. So this is basically like a whole program that every public school in the United States of America is mandated to take part in. Russ also talked a little bit about government commodities, and he said that these commodities are kind of based on like enrollment, so like how many students attend the school, and also demographics, which I'm sure takes into account socioeconomic status. He also said that like government commodities, like for example at Camden or a Chester school, cannot really compare to the type of commodities a Radnor school would get, because the typical student you would find at Camden or Chester, where there's going to be a lot more of a federal government play than at Radnor. So some of the government commodities that we receive at Radnor include ground beef, shredded cheese, juice cups, and fish sticks. So how's the nutrition scene at Radnor schools? Well, first thing I was surprised to find out was that there was a consulting group, which consisted of a dietitian, nutritionist, Russ himself, and an elementary school coordinator, and they design the menus every summer before the school season starts, and they make sure that every meal that they have in the cafeteria is healthy, it's nutritious. Being a public school under the NSLP National School Lunch Program does have a limit on calorie intake, so that definitely limits what Radnor can offer their students. There's also such thing as a reimbursable meal, which is kind of another thing under the NSLP, and being a school that we receive no tax dollars for food service, so this is something that cafeteria staff do emphasize a lot. It's kind of a motive for students to make healthy choices, whereas a reimbursable meal includes 5 components: protein, dairy, vegetable, a fruit, and a carbohydrate, but they only need 3 out of 5 of those components to get a reimbursement, where the school can get a money incentive from the federal government. And Russ also talked about how being a public school under the NSLP, we are subject to government checks every 3 years, which are random. We know what month they're coming at, but we don't know which exact day or which school they're exactly doing. So another thing I wanted to talk a little bit more in my presentation about was My Plate, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with, as it was infamously endorsed by previous First Lady Michelle Obama. This generally replaced the food pyramid, which was kind of the old icon for nutrition and how to eat healthy and properly. What's important is that Russ regarded this as the biggest change at Radnor, because once Michelle Obama kind of started this whole nutrition campaign as First Lady, he started to see a lot of things happening at Radnor. For example, 12 years ago, he was able to say, he said that they were actual real French fries, fried in fat, real soda, tasty cakes, and donuts were being offered at schools. However, today that's very different. We can't even offer soda at schools, where it's more like a carbonated juice drink. There is such thing as a 51% whole grain requirement, where all of the carbohydrates where 51% of the carbohydrates offered have to be whole grain, as well as a considerable amount of sodium restrictions and plenty of reduced fat options. One example I want to talk a little bit about today is Chick-fil-A at the high school. I think this example really encompasses kind of like the nutritional journey people have taken in nutrition in schools. I remember being in the middle school and how they offered the original chicken sandwich every week, which is shown on the upper right-hand corner. However, when I came to the high school, I realized that after a few months into the high school, they weren't serving that anymore, but rather they replaced it with a chicken tender and a hot dog bun. And so I asked Russ when I interviewed him, why exactly did you guys do this, and what was the motive behind that? So he said that this was actually a nutritional program they were working with the Springfield Chick-fil-A, and that the original chicken sandwich didn't have, it had too many calories to meet the calorie limit that the NSLP mandated, and there was too much chicken, too much of the actual meal came from protein. So with the small sliders, these were able to easily meet the calorie count, and also the bun had to be whole grain, which is what the new program implemented. Russ also mentioned a little bit about how a new administration would lead to more relaxed restrictions, particularly one example being how the original chicken sandwich, instead of getting it rid of altogether, they're now offering it every other week. Instead, before they were just replacing it with a new program, but now they're going back to it a little bit and offering it every other week. However, with the new restrictions and the new relaxed restrictions, this leaves us to question, is this really for the better or is it for the worse? Another thing I want to talk a little bit about today were the vending machines. I said that Russ managed for the 4 vending machines in the back of the cafeteria. He says that what's offered in the vending machines are known as smart snacks. They can't really be real junk food offered in any other regular vending machine that you would find, as they have to be compliant with the Healthy Hunger Kids Act. And this act is defined online as authorizes funding for federal school meal and child nutrition programs and increases access to healthy food for low-income children. So in essence, junk food is still kind of offered. It's not exactly healthy what the vending machines offer, but usually there are a lot more reduced fat forms than what they used to have a while back. I talked a little bit earlier about how looser restrictions, whether that would lead to a problem for the worse or a problem for the better, and with the whole NSLP program, with the whole My Plate movement, this really allows us to, consider commodities and how they really go up against the demand of students. And there are plenty of pros to having government commodities and, partaking in this nutritional journey, such as obviously nutritional standards are being met. Healthier options are being offered, so students do feel more obligated, or at least they're being more exposed to having, choosing healthier options, living a healthier lifestyle. However, on the other hand, for the cons, it can be economically costly. You don't really think about this because you think, oh, government commodities, it's financially more easier. We're getting funding from the government. However, like I said earlier, Radnor doesn't get any tax dollars that go to food service, and government commodities can actually limit what students want and how much food they're actually selling, because people don't really want to eat the new healthy things. For example, Russ was able to attest to how before the whole nutritional program was implemented, they were able to sell about 150 soft pretzels a day. However, once the whole grain carbohydrate requirement was implemented, they were only able to sell 35 a day, and that's a significant decrease in sales. Russ also talked a little bit about how he has to be competing with open campus. At RHS, kids are allowed to, drive their cars off campus. They can go to Honey Grove, they can go to Giant, they can go to Jimmy John's. However, at the high school, he has to be able to make things options. He has to have options that fit the NSLP, but he also has to make them so that people will want to eat it and so that the cafeteria doesn't face too much of a financial deficit. In the end, though, he does say, if we were to receive more government commodities from the government, it is going to limit what he can offer to students, and that can, in fact, affect majorly the sales. Overall, he did attest to people being generally very resistant to change, no matter what it is. Over the years, he has seen an increase in waste. People are not, even though they're being required to take healthy things for reimbursable meals, a lot of it's going into the trash. People aren't consuming it. People just don't like change. However, he's quoted as saying, people resist change all the time, no matter what it is. I do think there are some benefits to it, though. So although there has been a lot of resistance of what people want to eat and what people want to purchase, he has been saying, although a lot of food has gone to waste, almost it has been worth it to see more people making healthier options that they did not make before. So I heard a lot from a staff perspective from Russ himself, so I decided to I wanted to hear a little bit more from a student perspective and hear more from a person in my grade. He's a recent graduate of RHS, class of 2018, Cameron Carafavani. So Cameron's actually credited with implementing a new meal plan of fish tacos in the cafeteria during the year of 2015. When I asked him what made him want to start this program, what really influenced him, he's quoted as saying, "My family, we always cooked food at home. We have a culture around eating good food. When I first came to Radnor, it was a rather different experience." So besides Cameron being his usual self, I think that quote can really sum up to how, public school meals and nutrition, how even though, people are making efforts to be more nutritious, to have more options, there's still a lot of room for improvement. And after the program was implemented, Cameron was quoted saying, "People like the fish tacos a lot, but they are only one meal out of a month. So it would be much more beneficial if people just made much more healthier choices. It was still an improvement, but people need to take individual initiative as well." So I think that definitely that goes back to what Russ told me, and how although as a public school we're required to offer these things, we can't force students to really consume them. What we can do is to leave the options open and to expose students to nutritional eating. However, the ultimate choice comes down to them. So a little bit more on Cameron's campaign. In order to implement the fish tacos in the cafeteria, he first talked to the cafeteria staff, and what he saw was that a lot of the meals were pre-made, they were frozen, they were heavily processed. I think that's something that's you're going to find in a public school. And then after seeing that really influenced him to reach out to the Vetri Foundation, which is an organization whose mission is to reform school meals in inner city schools. So even though Radnor is far from an inner city school, the Vetri Foundation was very happy to help him in this process. So after coming up with several different meals and several different meal plans with the Vetri Foundation, he met with more of the cafeteria staff, and they were able to verify nutritional guidelines and if they met the NSLP guidelines and if they were a nutritional offering for the students. What they did like about Cameron's idea was that the fish sticks could be given as a government commodity. So not only would this be very financially easy on the district where they don't receive any tax dollars for food, they're going to be receiving an approval from the federal government that fish sticks are okay to serve because they're coming directly from the federal government. So this was definitely good for the food costs. However, that's not to say that significant resistance was met by people. Like Russ said, people are resistant to change, even when it's for the better or when it's for the nutrition of our generation. So what do I have to conclude from this overall project? I think I was able to observe that schools, although they might not have the best nutritional offerings, although they do have heavily processed meals, frozen meals, pre-made meals, a lot of improvements have been made from 12 years ago when real junk food was served in the cafeteria. You cannot see any of that today. I think that's definitely a huge step for the government, and for public schools in general. But I think that it's still, like Karen and Russ said, it is still really up to the individual for what they want, for the choices they want to make, and the type of nutritious or the type of lifestyle they want to make. What I've noticed amongst some of my friends, my peers, and my classmates was that many of them are not really aware of how to conduct a nutritional lifestyle, how to make healthy choices in the cafeteria. So I think that there could be a greater emphasis on nutritional education in health classes. Obviously, in health, I have not taken a health class for 2 years, but in health class, we learn a lot about alcohol, we learn a lot about drugs and mental health, but I think that there could be a greater emphasis on nutritional education. So in essence, improvements have been made from the past with Michelle Obama's My Plate campaign, but what we do have to keep in mind is that public schools do have a lot of limitations as they're part of the National School Lunch Program. All right, that's it.
Thank you so much. Good stuff. Appreciate it, Joy. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
I just have a comment. I had the opportunity to join the Wellness Committee of the Radnor Schools in April, and the discussion, this wasn't really the whole topic of the discussion, but we had a pretty big discussion on the challenge with families bringing in birthday and holiday foods.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to shape healthy options there as well. And there's a huge amount of resistance. Even, this is a well-educated community.
Yeah. I think before it was very intense. They were very strict on what you could bring into school for your child's birthday. But like Russ said, I think that's kind of toning down a little bit. People are taking a step back, and people are able to bring in more things that they like now.
I found the Vetri thing amazing. I mean, so this one student decides that he wants to try to make one healthy meal or suggest a healthy meal, and this got planned and done. I mean, could this be done by 3 more students and have, instead of one healthy meal a month that are interesting and might be tempting for a Radnor student to try with some government stuff, to make 3 or 4 of them? That'd be pretty cool. I hope there's some motivated cooks in the class of 2019.
That was really good, Emily. So is it, with the
you.
My Plate, is it one of each of the 4 categories?
Yeah,
Is that how
so
it works?
it's carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, protein, dairy, I think.
Does the protein change depending on what the hot meal of the day is? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so they have the federal meal, which is kind of what all the commodities they get from the government, they use that to make a meal in the cafeteria. But usually every meal they try to hit every one of those categories, although it's still up to the student of which categories they want to choose from, because the cafeteria can't force you to take stuff.
Emily, just a quick question. I have, first of all, thank you. I think you did a great job on this.
Thank you.
Did you get any sense of how the school system adapts all this to children with special dietary needs, like a diabetic or with allergies?
I actually have not encountered a lot of movements for diabetics or people with allergies in general. I know at my old school, in elementary school, they were very cautious about peanut free. If you had a peanut allergy, you could only sit at this table, and they had to check your lunch to see if you had peanuts if you wanted to sit at that table. However, I think that's toned down a lot now, since it's in high school and people are more aware of the allergies of what they have and what choices they can individually be making in the lunchroom.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have Julie up next. I like fish tacos too.
My topic's a bit more broad, a little bit darker. In hindsight, I probably should have chosen something more relevant to Radnor. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Where do I? It's in, yeah. I wish it wasn't, though. So this human trafficking, I'm sure most people have heard of it, although might not know a lot about it. So we'll start with the basics. What is human trafficking? The State Department, Human Homeland Security defines it as modern-day slavery. Basically, you are, if you're a victim, you're being coerced or forced to do something that you really don't want to do, whether that be carrying drugs over borders or being separated from your family and then forced to like break into a store, otherwise they'll kill your daughter or something. And it's basically, people are forcing you to do things you don't want to do. And what I found interesting when I read about it was that there are a lot of myths in America about human trafficking. So for example, as I said on the board, a lot of people seem to think that it's not a huge issue. The victims are always poor people, racial minorities, or women, and that it really doesn't occur in the United States. It's mostly a problem in other countries. And unfortunately, none of these are true. Okay. So as you can see on the board, there are a few statistics. There are the International Labor Union estimates that there are 25 million victims of human trafficking right now, and that number increases every year. And the average age of people when they are first trafficked is 13. And this industry, it's a $150 billion annual industry. So it's actually, it's the second largest transnational crime by profit. It's right after drug trafficking. And the second myth was that the only people who are trafficked are women, poor, or racial minorities, and this is not true. As you can see, 20% of trafficking victims are men. Usually they're trafficked for labor. They'll be forced to work 80-hour work weeks with no pay. And so that's not fun. And the last myth was that trafficking doesn't occur in America, but as you can see from this graph, trafficking has been growing exponentially in America. And according to the Polaris Project, which is the leading nonprofit against human trafficking, it's risen 862% in the last 10 years, and convictions of human traffickers has risen 5%. So a lot of people are getting away with a lot of abuse. This is a presentation to the Board of Health. I have to talk about the public health aspect. It's not just all doom and gloom. So the Department of Justice defines human trafficking. It says it fuels criminal organizations, it increases exposure to communicable diseases, and honestly, you don't want human traffickers in your backyard because most people, or some people have kids, and a lot of those kids are teenagers. You don't want your kid to be exposed and possibly trafficked. And so I have an example of an ad that was connected to human trafficking. So say your kid, they're looking for a summer job and they see an ad and they're like, oh, call now, you can get a summer job, you get $100 a week. That's amazing for a kid. And you've also probably seen the signs around town, like summer work, text for info, and also on light poles that get paid to travel. You've probably all seen these around garage sale season. And the thing is, these are all related to human trafficking. You can even see the police officer holding the middle one. You can tell that these, some of the red flags that the police officers talked about where there's no location information. So like for the one on the phone, there's no location where the student would go. So they'd call and then the person would be like, oh, come for an interview at this address. And they have no idea where it is. And they'd go and they'd get kidnapped. And also there's no information besides the phone number. So there's no adult related to this business. There's nothing about it. It's literally just a phone number. And another red flag was that the high pay, for example, the get paid to travel, $5,200 a month for a job which requires no previous experience. That's over $60,000 a year. It's a little bit too good to be true. And that's a tactic that they use to lure in unsuspecting teenagers. So what is Pennsylvania currently doing to prevent human trafficking? And Pennsylvania is actually a leading state. It's considered Tier 1 by the Polaris Project, which means it's extremely progressive. So we have 2 laws currently, the Act 105 and Article 30, which prohibit human trafficking and also criminalize it. So human traffickers, if they are caught, can be convicted. And also there's a safe harbor bill in the General Assembly, which means that victims, if they go to the police, they won't be punished for what they did while a victim. And then also, as some of the board members talked to me about, a lot of companies and hospitals require employees to undergo training so they can identify domestic abuse victims, human trafficking victims, and the Board of Nursing actually requires its members to take a course. And also, the Pennsylvania has a hotline for victims, the Coalition Against Rape, which fields calls all the time about this. So what more can we do to prevent this from happening? So this is again from the Polaris Project, 10 benchmarks for human trafficking, and Pennsylvania hits 8 of them. So the ones we're missing are training law enforcement on how to deal with human trafficking cases, and also a safe harbor, which is in the progress, but it's not completed yet. So again, the safe harbor law would protect victims from prosecution. So currently, if a trafficking victim goes to law enforcement for help, they can be convicted of everything they've done under trafficking, even if they didn't want to do it. And so this law would help victims escape. And also the second benchmark Polaris suggested was further education, conferences, training for everyone who could potentially come into contact with a victim. And then also what can people do to help this is that they can, most importantly, educate themselves, support the cause, and also report any instances. And I think it's worth noting that if you come across a trafficker, you should not get physically involved. They could be armed, they could be with other people. So the best thing you can actually do is to call either the police or the National Trafficking Hotline. And that's all I have today. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
My understanding is the King of Prussia Mall is a real hot spot because it's by the I-95 Northeast Corridor. I don't know if you heard any of that. And I believe they have some police, like full-time people there, because it's such a hub for trafficking.
So the KOP is a little bit unique even in Pennsylvania because they do provide like training. Each of their police, like the mall cops, are required to undergo training for this. And they actually recently arrested 2 people who were trying to traffic people at the mall. So their program is very effective.
My question is, thank you, that was great. What level of awareness do you think your peers at the high school have about this issue?
We recently did a project in my English class where we each presented on a topic, and I did human trafficking, and they didn't seem to know a lot about it. I don't think it's something that they ever came across.
That was great. I'm shocked about this. I had no idea. I've seen signs like this, and I had no idea that, that they were potentially scams. That's really, really scary.
Yeah.
That was good.
Thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. There have been some celebrity, I think, help with this. I think Ashton Kutcher's very involved with human trafficking. It's one of his Twitter campaigns that he's always tweeting about. And I think that's really, I guess the education part of this is all of us can educate ourselves. And I think sometimes the celebrities and other people who teens are sort of interested in. I'm not sure if he's such interest these days, but certainly that's the education seems like a great thing, and thank you for presenting that to us for our education, because it's certainly something.
I'd like to add, it can happen here. I remember distinctly 2 cases here in Radnor in the last half a dozen years. One was a salon or a nail salon, something of that nature, where the operators were actually being kept prisoner in the salon, and I don't remember the details on the second one, but our police are very up on it and looking out for it.
So we do screen in the hospitals in the area, on triage when the patients come in. There are several questions we can ask to identify those particular people, and then get social work, that sort of thing, involved if we suspect that.
Great, thank you so much. So while our students are still awake from our boring meeting, thank you so much for your presentations, and thank you for your help all year and your input and sharing with us as board members the perspective of the high school students in Radnor Township. We will present you guys with some certificates today. Sometimes they have a photographer that comes out and takes a picture of you guys with us after the board meeting is done, so I'd like to formally give you these certificates. If you guys want to just come up to the front for a second, please.
Because we usually go right up here. Marie's got her.
Good to see you. Get over here, guys. We'll have a quick family shot. To the Radnor, you guys in front. You guys can block it. You'll-
Are we going to post them on the website?
Try to, and we try to do this in the magazine too sometimes, so we all kind of move close here. There we go, great.
Closer, cuddle. Can you see?
Yep, that's perfect. Take a few.
Thank you. Very nice.
So hopefully Julia and Emily will help inform their underclassmen friends for next year who wants to help us next year as student representatives to our board. That'd be wonderful. So I think we'll start working on that early this September, or do we kind of start at the end of the summer?
So I was wondering, we'll probably put an email out to the school district. Kevin, maybe you could just, I forget who I contacted last year. It was the guidance department. Mr. Levin?
He's the chair of the guidance department. You work with Mr. Bechtold.
Oh, right. That'd be great. So maybe we could do that mid-August, send it out, or even early August. And then if anybody else wants to help, because I think it'll be my last year next year, if we want to send it out, whoever wants to be on, right, and maybe another person. We could look at the letters, that sort of thing. So I'll send out the email early August to the high school and get that contact going. And so the students, because we were a little late this year. And you guys did a fabulous job. Thank you
Good,
so
thank you.
much.
Really good presentations. I think we've had, over the years, some really interesting ones, and those were two certainly cool subjects that we talk about but didn't know a whole lot about, so thank you. Real quick, just before we kind of adjourn, if anybody has any announcements, of course, we'll take those, but I just want to kind of remind the public about a few things for the summertime for safety. Number one is just the tick-borne safety, just being aware of ticks on your body. Adults and children, this goes for checking your kids and also checking your own bodies. The best way to prevent Lyme disease is removing a tick within 24 hours of it latching onto your skin. They are very small and they're difficult to detect, sometimes just by vision. So I think a good hand kind of feeling of the body is a great way to detect a tick on your skin by feeling a small splinter and then removing it as promptly as possible. It is a good idea to seek medical attention if you don't know how long the tick has been there. It's also a great idea to check your body for circular rashes, since that is the first sign of the tick-borne Lyme disease and generally occurs for about a week or so prior to other more serious symptoms occurring and is extremely easily treated with antibiotics. So a good idea for everyone in the township would be, since we are in a endemic area for Lyme disease, is to check your body frequently for ticks. Using DEET and other products that prevent insects, mosquitoes, and ticks is also a good idea. There are only 2 approved medications that I think in humans, I might be off on animals and whatnot, but DEET and permethrin are the 2 that have been shown to prevent tick and mosquito bites. So that's an important topic for health for the summer. Of course, before we meet again, the flu vaccine will be available, usually late August, early September. We should find your primary care doctors or a local minute clinic / pharmacy and try to get that vaccine. There is no time frame for getting the vaccine that's too early, which I get a question a lot in my medical practice. Why should I get my flu vaccine in August when flu is typically a December and January issue in Pennsylvania? Well, the truth is that getting your flu vaccine is important no matter when it is, and it's only available for a limited window. So if you can get it, I would get it. Any other announcements? Or I see no public participation today. So we should adjourn for the summer. I thank everyone on the board for taking up your Monday nights and helping us out with the township. So thank you, folks. We'll see you next September.